Yeah, hi, it's me again. I told you before that I used to be involved in the occult. So knowing that, it shouldn't come as any great surprise that one night I had a dream, and I took this dream as an omen. And this is an omen that just kind of led me into oblivion. In my dream, at the time, let's start out with at the time, I owned a business in San Jose on North 13th Street called Tohill's Prospecting and Treasure Hunting Supplies. Wonderful business. I loved it. I sold metal detectors and gold dredges and stuff like that. Well, I was involved in the occult, and I was really deeply involved, and I had a dream one night. And in the dream, I remember I was diving for gold in one of Northern California's rivers, and I came to the surface, and my daughter Joyce was standing on the bank. And when I broke the surface, I had a gold nugget in my hand. It was about that big around, pretty good size. And I said, "Here, Joyce, you can have this. There's plenty more where this came from." Well, I took that dream as an omen that I needed to go gold mining, because I just knew that's where I was going to find my fame and my fortune. So by golly, I closed out my store. I sent everything back to Keene Engineering. Most of it went there. Made myself an 8-inch dredge and headed for Oregon Creek. Now, Oregon Creek is located close to the Yuba River. It may even be a feeder in it, I forget. But anyway, when we got up there, it was snowing. The snow was falling, roads were covered. I was pulling a small 15-foot trailer. Had a 2-wheel drive Ford pickup, and trying to get uphill, I couldn't pull that trailer because I didn't have any chains. Wasn't expecting snow. I didn't check the weather forecast. I wasn't smart enough to do that. So anyway, ended up crosswise on this logging road way up in the middle of the mountains, and pitched a tent in the snow. Spent that night in the snow building up on the tent sagging so bad. Had a dog and a couple of cats, 3 kids, and we're all in this little 10 by 10 foot by 10 foot tent. That should have told me something. But anyway, we spent the next month, I have dredging in this frigid ice snow runoff. It's January, high Sierras, and here I am diving for gold. I had a wetsuit, I had a good Farmer John, and but still I could only stay down for about 20 minutes, and I'd come up and I'd be just shaking all over, and stand by the fire, get warm, go back down again. Spent 30 days there in what should have been ideal gold area, okay? In that 1 month, got very little gold, and what little gold that I did have, I was crossing this Oregon Creek in a shallow spot. It's very mossy, and I slipped, fell flat on my back. My arm came down with a month's worth of gold in a pan, slammed it down on the rocks, and gold and rocks and everything just went everywhere. And so I lost the whole month's work. Okay. Went back to San Jose for about a week, did some modifications to the dredge, and then headed back for the Yuba River. Arrived back, it was sometime in February, still colder than the devil. It was about 5 miles up from Yuba City. Where I was mining, I had the high line in, and anyway, I spent from February until September there. You want to know how much money I made? $135 from February to September. I loved it though. There was an interesting thing happened. The only radio station that I could get, I had a battery radio, and the only station I could get came in somewhere around 8 o'clock at night. And it was a religious program. It was Garner Ted Armstrong and the World Tomorrow. Now Garner Ted, if you've never listened to him, he was a fascinating speaker. Now normally I hated radio evangelists because they would spend out of a 30-minute program, they would spend at least 20 minutes asking for you to support their mission. Okay, and they were usually hellfire and damnation, and I never liked that kind of preacher. So anyway, Garner Ted wasn't that way. Garner Ted was an eloquent speaker, and he never asked for money. In fact, they gave away things. They gave away books. They would send you whatever you wanted. You might say I was a captive audience. I was so starved for the voice of an adult that I would listen to this program, you might say religiously, every night. And then I'd go to bed. Well, that's the way it went until September. Now, I went out there, I forget how much money I had. Money went a lot farther then than it does now. I might have had $500, but come September, I was down to my last $5 bill. I'd made $130 in gold, but that was gone. One night, Garner Ted Armstrong had finished his 30-minute program. He shut down and I shut off the radio. It's in the early 3rd or 4th day of September. I got up out of my sleeping bag. We were sleeping outside, by the way, and it was so beautiful. It was just so wonderful. The river rushing by, no traffic, no cars, just the sound of the river, God's stars shining overhead. The nights were always clear. Didn't have forest fires then like you have now, so everything was clear, beautiful. Listening to Garner Ted, looking at God's creation, this is where I really established a relationship with God. This is where I found God. Didn't get any money, but I found God. Well, September 3rd, 4th, or 5th, kids needed to get back in school. I'm down to my last $5 bill, and even then, that wasn't enough to gas up my truck and go anywhere. I didn't have a place to live anymore. I had a tent, big hairy deal. Suddenly, the stupidity of what I had done threw away a good business to go gold mining. Everything hit home, and I realized that I'd been a fool. I got up, walked over to the river's edge, and we were high, maybe 10, 15-foot cliff, rock cliff, solid rock, and I began to cry. And I mean, I didn't just cry, I bawled. I had tears as big as hockey pucks. I started to pray. And I said, God, I know I've been a fool, but I need help getting out of here. I probably said a lot more, but I just remember that part. Finally, got back in my sleeping bag, went to sleep. Woke up in the next morning, had a Farmer John style wetsuit. That's like bib overalls, and then you have a jacket that goes on it. Getting ready to start the day's work again. Nothing else to do. Was fixing breakfast. blackberry hotcakes. I still love them today. This man comes up and he says, I like your dredge. You wouldn't be interested in selling it, would you? I said, I want $500 for it. Now the engine alone was worth $500, and then you add the pump, which is worth another $500, not to mention the complete dredge. That was a steal. That man whipped out five $100 bills so fast. In 30 minutes, I had the truck packed, the kids back across the river, highlining everything in. Had the dog in the back and my 3 kids in the front, and we were on our way to San Jose. Now this was a time before seatbelts. Couldn't gotten all my kids in the front the way I did then. But anyway, got back to San Jose. $500 was just the right amount of money. I managed to get an apartment, pay a couple of months rent. Got kids back in school and got set up. Years later, on the way back, I realized, I remembered the prayer that I'd said the night before. But this didn't seem like a miracle. It didn't seem like any kind of visitation. It just seemed like some dummy wanted my dredge, and I was glad to get rid of it. But just in case it was an answer to prayer, I whipped off a really fast, thank you God, you know. Years later, I got to thinking about that incident, and I realized, you know, the dream was true. That's where I found the treasure. But the true treasure wasn't gold. It was that I established a relationship. I found God. I found God in the wilderness. I used to spend hours just praying. Well, that's that story. But there's a little bit more to it than that. Like I said, I had the high line in. You couldn't get to where I was without using a high line. There was no way. The seat that you used to cross on the high line, it was locked. And so I wondered, how in the world did that man get over there? Where did he come from? Steep mountain on where I was, except for where I was in just a little flat area where we were camped. But anyway, that's my story, and I'm sticking to it. I hope you enjoyed it. God will work with you to find you wherever he can. Can't outrun him, can't out-escape him. Well, that's my story. Let's not get preachy. Love you guys. Bye-bye.